Thank you for inviting me to talk about the first decade and as a stand-in for the first two chairs. In preparation for this talk, I read all the minutes from the early days of the NCC, as well as the report on the meeting of the National Planning Team that was held at the Hoover, and Victoria Bester's history of the founding of the NCC. I was at the Hoover meeting and was involved in many of the subcommittees in the early days of the NCC, but there are many things I did not remember. GEAL has an excellent archive with good indexing. As Vicki has mentioned, the Japan Foundation and the Japan-United States Friendship Commission created a national committee and appointed Amy Heinrich as its chair in December 1991. The NCC was intended to have a different mission than SEAL, to address the needs of all users, regardless of whether they were at an institution with a Japanese collection or not, to involve librarians from all tiers, including public libraries, to have representatives of organizations involved in the promotion of Japanese studies, such as NIAC and SEAL, and to work directly with the funders. Its emphasis was on national resource sharing rather than on building collections at the local level. The first committee meeting was held in February 1992 with 2 faculty, 2 librarians, representatives of ARL, NIAC, LC, UTLISH, Japan, and SEAL, and Amy. The first year saw the choice of a name, the writing of a mission statement and bylaws, and the first efforts at addressing the recommendations of the National Planning Conference. The Hoover Conference had made 9 recommendations in 3 categories: collection development, access to library services and materials, and the recruitment and training of librarians before disbanding. The first steps towards addressing collection needs included a proposal for a pilot project for multi-volume sets, the creation of a committee to advise the Japan Foundation on its library support program, a proposal to the Department of Education's foreign periodical program, and a report on databases. The second year saw efforts that built on the accomplishments of the first year. The Council achieved formal tax-exempt status. It also created a permanent subcommittee on recruitment and training of Japanese librarians. The Database Committee morphed into a subcommittee on electronic information resources. Finally, the Council concluded that to be able to accomplish its goals, it was necessary to have a permanent salaried director responsible for general organization and fundraising. The chair would then have more time to concentrate on overall planning for the NCC. By the time I became chair in 1998, the NCC consisted of a council with 2 standing committees and 2 task forces. Most importantly, in addition to a chair, there was a paid half-time director, which greatly increased what the NCC could accomplish. The council included 2 faculty members, 1 each in the social sciences and humanities, 5 Japanese studies librarians from North American libraries representing large, medium, and small collections, a liaison from Japan, and representatives of organizations interested in Japanese studies librarianship, ARL, NIAC, the American Advisory Committee of the Japan Foundation, the Council on East Asian Libraries, and the Library of Congress. In sum, the basic structure that has continued to 2018 had taken shape. The next slide is from the Multi-Volume Sets Project webpage on the NCC website. The map depicts titles purchased and cataloged in the United States between 1993 and 2014. What began as a pilot project in 1992 expanded over the course of the first decade, refining its criteria and increasing the formats that could be included. A commitment to rapid cataloging, cost sharing, and free ILL were prerequisites for participating in this program. With annual funding support from the Japan-United States Friendship Commission, a total of 134 titles were acquired by 23 libraries by 2000. In total, to this date, 400 titles have been purchased by 38 institutions. At the same time that the NCC was developing the MVS project, it was invited by the Japan Foundation to advise the American Advisory Committee on the Library Support Program. 5 librarians were appointed to the Library Support Committee, and they recommended changes to the guidelines for the grant program to emphasize resource sharing rather than building local collections. New emphasis was placed on accessibility at the national level, to be done by adding acquired titles to OCLC or Arlen, the ability of scholars at nearby institutions to use the collection, and thinking of the materials as contributing to the national collection, whether by building specialized niche collections or developing existing strengths. As a result, while libraries were able to apply for funding based on their own needs, they addressed national needs by developing and maintaining specialized collections rather than duplicating widely held titles. In 1994, Tom Reimer, who was on the NCC at the time, suggested a proposal for Japanese art catalogs, which became known as JAC. This proposal illustrates the central role of faculty who served on the NCC. It grew out of his work with Ellen Conant on a Nihonga exhibition and was ultimately realized in 1996 together with the cooperation of ACE Japan, the Japan Association for Cultural Exchange. The objectives of the JAC project were to strengthen Japanese fine arts resources in the U.S. by systematically collecting currently published exhibition catalogs from Japan and providing national access to the materials acquired. This project has targeted a valuable and difficult to acquire set of materials of much interest to U.S. scholars. So far, 7,613 titles have been cataloged by the Freer Library. Here is an example of one such record. In terms of access and services, the second category of recommendations from the Hoover Conference, 3 needs were identified: retrospective conversion of pre-1980 materials, online serial holdings, and institutional ILL procedures with Japan. While the NCC was unsuccessful in finding significant money for recon, and it was mostly left to individual libraries, and putting serial holdings online is still a work in progress, the NCC was able to move interlibrary loan with Japan forward. Dorothy Gregor traveled to Japan and met with Waseda and some national university librarians. Shortly thereafter, Waseda loaded its records into WorldCat and agreed to provide ILL reciprocally with U.S. libraries. Then in 1999, Naxos and ANUL sponsored a conference that led to a pilot which became known as the GIF Project, the Global Information Framework. Mary Jackson was the NCC director at the time, and her position at ARL, the Association for Research Libraries, provided entree to university library directors and helped get them on board for a program based on reciprocal privileges. The third category of recommendations from the Hoover Conference concerned training. By 2000, a variety of programs had addressed the specialized training needs of Japanese studies librarians. Fortunately, the recruitment of new librarians has been much less of a problem than initially assumed, despite the large number of retirements between 1990 and 2000. Successful training programs included training workshops done by CJM, the NDLF Japan Foundation Senior Librarian Training, language training organized by the Japan Foundation, and specialized workshops such as the CGP-funded Naxos training in Tokyo and Freer's Rare Book Workshop in January of 2000. The year 2000 conference provided a chance to take stock to see what had been accomplished, what was pending, and where we wanted to go. Reviewing what had worked in 2000, I came to these conclusions. Many of the reasons we were successful are not unique to the NCC, but are shared with other groups such as SEAL. The most successful ways of cooperating had been voluntary, met local needs, otherwise defined as institutional self-interest, took local academic and collection strengths into account, and were scalable. The Japan Foundation Library Support Program, the Multi-Volume Sets Project, and the Japan Art Catalog Project were successful because they met local needs for materials and built on local strengths. Those projects made it possible to deepen research collections in North America without unnecessary duplication. Cooperation succeeds when a project supports institutional advancement and enhanced service to users rather than saving money. Another factor that contributed to the success of various projects was the vision and commitment of numerous people, especially those who helped to launch each project, who saw what cooperation could accomplish and who had a commitment to pursue it. They drew up project guidelines, found funding, and recruited others to help them. Throughout its existence, the NCC has depended on the subject expertise, time, and energy of volunteers who have served on top of full-time jobs. As we consider implementing new projects, we need to realize that both projects and volunteer recruitment will be most successful when our time and energy serve national and local needs at the same time. Of course, none of this would have been as easy without improvements in communication. The spread of computers, the growth of listservs, and the presence of shared online bibliographic databases have all facilitated the sharing of resources and knowledge and allowed libraries to specialize and made cooperation more palatable to faculty and students. The fact that articles and books can be delivered from one library to another, often in less than a week, means that many no longer feel a need for their library to own everything. At the same time, there has been one other ingredient that differentiates the NCC from other Japanese studies librarian organizations, such as SEAL's Committee on Japanese Materials, outside funding, which is also true for the Korean Collections Consortium. Funding from the Japan Foundation and the Friendship Commission was the catalyst that brought cooperation into being and has made possible the creation of a formal organizational structure that has been central to its success. It has facilitated the hiring of a half-time director, which has meant that there has been programmatic planning. While faculty and librarians donate their time to SEAL, AAS, and the NCC, such time is finite because all have full-time obligations and serve for fixed terms. Foundation support has allowed the NCC to take a long view, to identify needs, and to systematically address them over time. The amount that the NCC has accomplished since 1991 is remarkable and is due in large part to the support provided by the funders for its activities, and most especially for an executive director and biannual meetings of the council. There has been continuity and new initiatives. Financial support provided funds for projects like the multi-volume sets project, training workshops for librarians and faculty, and negotiations with Japan on interlibrary loan, image use, and digital resources. Equally importantly, the Japan Foundation and the Friendship Commission have provided not only financial support, but also connections, credibility, and official standing. One of the unspoken goals of the Hoover Conference was to build institutional frameworks so we would not need to rely on personal connections to get materials from Japan. This has happened. The NCC's ties to the Japan Foundation have opened doors in Japan, and the NCC's ties to the Commission and its sister organization Kulkan were helpful in the establishment of the global ILL framework. Projects such as JAC, Image Use Protocol, and Librarian Training could not have been addressed at the individual library or librarian level. Foundation support has also led to a focus on building national collections rather than local ones, and a search for national-level solutions. This was seen in the revisions to the Japan Foundation guidelines and in the guidelines created for the multi-volume set project as well as the JAC project. As a result, there has been less duplication of titles throughout the United States, while ensuring the availability of expensive research materials not easily obtainable from Japan. The NCC has provided a structure, librarians and faculty have done the work, and the Commission has made it possible. The founding of the NCC was driven by faculty to tackle needs that they felt were not being adequately addressed. While SEAL was originally a faculty librarians forum, by the time the NCC was founded, faculty had not been active participants in SEAL for over 2 decades. The rapid changes in the world of information meant that the faculty wanted to change the direction of library activities. The NCC bylaws and history make clear the important role faculty and other end users were to play. The membership shall represent, insofar as possible, library and user interests, including representatives from currently functioning organizations concerned with library and scholarly issues in Japanese studies, and librarians and scholars from major as well as second and or third tier academic institutions. This active involvement of faculty has led to a number of initiatives, most notably access to Nexus IR, ILL with Japan, and the Image Use Protocol Task Force. As Satie Noguchi notes in her article, faculty involvement has been vital for the NCC activities. Librarians received a different kind of input from faculty, while librarians educated faculty about library functions and issues that they had not previously understood. The founders also wanted the NCC to include members from Japan and the Library of Congress, and the practice has been institutionalized in the NCC's bylaws. The Japanese representative serves as the liaison to the library community in Japan, and as a result has facilitated such activities as establishing the gift project or developing the image use protocol. In the past, the NCC benefited from ARL support on a number of initiatives, most particularly related to ILL. Because the NCC has had representatives from LC, ARL, and Japan, it has been the voice for North American collections in Japan. Finally, because the NCC has had outside funding since 2000, they have taken on responsibility for training Japanese studies librarians and faculty. The difference between SEAL and NCC training initiatives, as I see it, has been partly one of quantity, but more importantly, of focus. The focus has targeted the end user, not just the librarian. Librarians have been trained, but in return, they have been expected to conduct workshops for faculty in their region. Over time, the NCC's focus has changed from collection building to infrastructure support, from training librarians to creating programs for faculty and students that open the door to Japanese information. But the common thread has been the development and implementation of projects based on user needs. The charge of the NCC is to be proactive, to identify needs in the scholarly community and develop strategies to address them. Its official role as spokesman for North American Japanese collections in Japan, the continuity of its leadership, faculty participation, and the ongoing support provided by the Japan-United States Friendship Commission has been central to its ability to achieve its goals and are what differentiate it from SEAL.